our co-founder, our thought leader, our visionary,
Mr. Dan Monaghan. Come on up.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. You know how that joke goes, I'm the only guy standing between you and the bar, but I guess Chuck has made sure that that's not the case. He's already brought the beer into the session. So anyhow, we're going to plow through some content here. I'm at that weird age where I kind of don't know if I should put my glasses on or off. They feel weird to have on, but I can't see my slides otherwise. So anyhow, I'm going to, it's been a great couple of days, and it's a great opportunity for all of you to learn from each other, a great opportunity for us to learn from you. I mean, that's really how this all started. It was an opportunity for us to ensure that the organization could stay agile and capitalize on the latest opportunities in digital marketing. And so we pull everyone together and have this thought leadership session, and it's just grown over the years. The other day, on Thursday, we did the Top Gun session, and Neil and I covered some different areas. Largely, the session I helped him with was building equity in our business. What are the things we can do to create wealth in our business? And for those of you that are working your way towards the Top Gun status, I'll tell you, when you experience your first Top Guns retreat, it's a real powerful opportunity. Spending a couple of days with 8 people around a table or around, in the woods somewhere or on the top of the CN Tower or wherever we are, it's a very powerful opportunity to share best practices with each other. And for me, and they showed that picture there of Francois, but it was especially powerful to be in Toronto. And was this last May? I can't remember exactly when it was. July? Okay. But it was sitting around this table with these consultants that were really advisors to us and hearing them say that now is the time to come together under the WSI brand. And that was a little bit weird because, for those of you that are a little newer in the organization, we went through some explosive growth in the early 2000s. And many of our franchisees were only a year or two in the business. I mean, the average age of consultants in the system was pretty young. And there were those more seasoned consultants, 7 or 8 years under their belt that said, I kind of want to develop my own identity. I don't really want to be identified with this rookie here. And so they built some of their own brand equity. But what's interesting is those rookies have grown up. The level of sophistication now and professionalism in the WSI network is unparalleled. And so to have these people say, now is the time to come together under the WSI brand. Why would a consultant want their own website when they can be leveraging our site? The job Cheryl has done is amazing with the assistance of Marty. I mean, our new site is a reflection of with conversion architecture flowing through that entire site. And maybe it's the book, the 3rd edition. Who else can say that our company has literally written the book on digital marketing? The 3rd edition of an international bestseller, one of the top-rated digital marketing books on Amazon. The latest Web Marketing Association, the #1 digital agency in the world. Talk about WSI pride. Who would have thought they'd ever see that happen? Who else in your local community can say that about themselves when you're talking to potential clients compared to your competition? And what Cheryl's recently done with the HubSpot integration, now the ability for you to not only leverage our site, but to be able to leverage that whole HubSpot platform as yours, right, underneath our site. So there's a lot of stuff happening that's pretty exciting. And it was really neat to hear that from the Top Guns telling us that now is the time. And it was actually Doug a number of years ago who threw down the gauntlet, and he talked about we have to focus on one voice, one vision as an organization. And now it's all really coming together. So it's a really exciting time in the development of WSI. I put this photo up in the Top Gun session. I said, how much is this house worth? And of course, you don't know how much the house is worth. You don't know how many square feet it is. You don't know where it's located. But if we had some of that data, we could probably calculate the value of this house. But if you were the purchaser of this house and you were touring through the house, it was an open house, and you knew that the house purchase price included all of the contents of the house, and you're walking through the attic and you come across this leaning against the rafters, okay, a Rembrandt, now that $300,000 house becomes a $30 million house. And so we were talking about what are the Rembrandts in the attics of our businesses? How can we create some Rembrandts in our attics? And one of the ways we can do that is by building our list and nurturing that list. You know, oftentimes for businesses, one of the most valuable assets they have is not on their balance sheet. It's their list. So how many people are on your list that you're nurturing through your marketing automation system? And which could be under the WSI system, the HubSpot system, could be nurturing those. And that was, Val talked about that in her session. What is it when it comes time to sell your business or pass your business on to someone else, when you can say, oh, and by the way, this also includes 48,000 leads in my system that I've been nurturing with this brand over the last number of years. Okay, that's very powerful and incremental or accretive to the value of your business. So anyhow, we talked about this quote, and it was a couple of years ago, I remember I shared it with you. I said, the key to success is to create more value than we capture. Does anyone remember who that quote came from? Okay, it was Tim O'Reilly, one of the legends of Silicon Valley. He said the key to success is to create more value than you capture. So one of the things we talked about in the Top Gun session is this thing, and we left off with this last year in Montreal. We said, how much value are you creating for your customers? Is it an issue of your customers leaving you, or are they afraid you're going to leave them? Right? It's not an issue of you can't afford to lose your customers. The issue is, can they afford to lose you? Because you're creating so much value. So take that assessment of who your customers are and the value you're creating. And part of that also comes down to choosing your customers well. Because we can create a lot more value for some customers than we can for others. Right? If you're working with a flower shop that's selling $40 bouquets of roses and the value of a lead is $5 to them and the value of a sale is maybe $10, we got to sell a lot of bouquets of flowers for them to make much money and for you to extract much value out of that. But if you're working with a B2B company or a manufacturer and a lead is worth $500 to them or $5,000, a sale is worth $50,000, all of a sudden there's an opportunity to create much more value on a per lead basis. So we talked amongst the top guns about, and the majority agreed that we're really in the lead generation business. And by the way, that hasn't changed since 1995. And it probably won't change, in 2030. This is about generating leads and sales for our customers. And so let's pick up where we left off last year and talk about the road ahead. Now, for those of you that have ever taken driver training, you may remember that the instructor talked about the importance of looking far down the road, right? Look as far down the road as you can. And ironically, that's because it actually improves our peripheral vision. The further we look down the road, the more we're able to see what's happening around us, the more context we have for what's going on in the world around us at this time. So I'll take you down the road a little bit. We'll talk about a few things we talked about last year. I'll give you some updates on some of those things. We'll talk about some new things. But one of the things that has not changed and won't change is the continual expansion of complexity in our space. Now, this is the MarTech 5000, as it's called, which is a listing of all the different marketing technology platforms. They call it the MarTech 5000. Actually, this year there was over 7,000 technologies reflected in this infographic. They call it a super graphic. So how can local companies keep up with this? How do they know what technologies and products to use? Right? This is one of the advantages of being part of a network like WSI. We're able to harness the intellectual capital of this network around the world. We don't come up with all these ideas ourselves. Most of the products and services and partnerships and suppliers we have in the WSI network have come from you, have come from the best of. How does somebody locally compete with that? Right? You're plugged into a global think tank where the best of the cream floats to the top. But it is a complex world that we're part of. This is what's happened since 2001, since they first started coming out with that MarTech infographic. 2011, 150 technologies, and today over 7,000. And who knows how many next year. It's just going to keep growing. And we need to keep abreast of that change as well. So complexity is a problem for our clients. But it can be an opportunity for us, as long as we continue to learn continue to evolve, and live up to our motto of simplifying the internet, right? WSI, we simplify the internet. We take all this complex stuff and we make it simple and we deliver value, because at the end of the day, we're delivering leads, we're delivering revenue, we're delivering profit to our clients. Now, maybe just take a moment of self-inventory and ask yourself, how have you developed since we last met in Montreal? What skills have you developed? Where are you further down the line today than you were a year ago? Because that's an important, when you see these growth stars Val brought up here, I can guarantee you that they're not sitting still. Because if you're sitting still, you're falling behind, right? Because the world keeps changing, the world keeps moving ahead. So what are the investments that you're making into your continual learning and growth? So there's complexity, it continues to grow. The technology stacks, the attribution models continue to become more complex, knowing what traffic is generating what sales and generating what customers. A couple of years ago in Toronto, we talked about this movement from demand harvesting to demand generation, right? Because it used to be pretty simple. If a company was selling widgets, you'd put an ad up on Google PPC for widgets, they'd click on that ad, they'd go to a website for widgets, and then they'd buy a widget or become a lead for a company that sells widgets. Right? It was pretty simple in those days. But as Google's costs have continued to rise, as new advertising ecosystems have continued to emerge, it's more complex today, right? Because we got to go way up in the funnel and nurture someone through that multiple step process. This is where marketing automation now becomes important, and how we're nurturing them over a long period of time through that buyer's journey. So it's become more complex. The wind in our sails is slowing. Now that might sound a little bit weird for me to say, but I've talked about Mary Meeker in the past. I've talked about how every May, all of Silicon Valley is sitting on the edge of their seats waiting for Mary Meeker's Internet Trends Report. She's considered the leading analyst in all of Silicon Valley. And what she said this year, and it's 334 pages, by the way, it's an interesting read, but what she said this year is that there is a slowing in growth in the internet. It's not that it's going backwards, but the rate of growth is slowing. There are less ad impressions. The growth in ad impressions is slowing. The growth in digital devices being shipped is slowing. Right? As individuals, we're not spending as much time online, or at least for the first time ever, we have a cognitive awareness that we're spending too much time online. Many of us actually are trying to dial it back a little bit. Taking the phones off the family's kitchen table, right? And now devices are actually coming with monitoring in them now. Apple and many others are now allowing us to track how much time we're spending. Not because they think we should, it's because we think we should. We want to kind of get some more balance in our life. So there's a slowing in the growth rate. And if you slow the growth rate of ad impressions, but the demand is still there, what happens to the price? The price keeps going up on a cost per click basis or on a cost per impression basis, and that makes it real tough for our customers to try to do this on their own. They need us now more than ever if we know what we're doing. Right? And this is why it's so critical to be working with partners, and it was awesome seeing Jack up here talking about what he's doing, and guaranteed that what he's doing. Well, we'll talk about some of the AI coming up, but it's real important that we figure out how are we going to adapt to this. Now, it's really interesting, and most people don't recognize this, but we're about to see an explosion in ad inventory. So right now, on the one hand, it's being constrained, but there's new ad ecosystems that are emerging. Autonomous vehicles, and we'll talk a little bit about this, are going to represent an explosion in the digital advertising ecosystem. The Internet of Things, 5G, another total explosion, internet everywhere, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But complexity is definitely increasing. It seems like today, everywhere you hear about machine learning and AI, right? It's kind of like a couple of years ago, it was all about big data this, big data that. I guarantee you that 80% of anything that has AI on it is probably not even AI. Okay, you walk through a digital marketing conference, you walk through a technology conference, you walk through any conference and it's AI, AI, AI. But most of it's not AI. Data scientists would tell you that it's really just expert systems. It's a algorithm. What AI is about is taking large sums of data, applying computing power to that data, and then allowing the system to learn things beyond what it was programmed to do. And And so the question is, can systems learn from the data? And there's lots of examples of where that's happening and how that will literally change the world. But what machine learning and AI is about is identifying patterns, seeing patterns in data that would be it's like finding a needle, not just in a haystack, a needle in an ocean. They're able to do that. Machine learning is about making predictions. Now, where is this important? Where is this relevant in our world? Well, there's an emergence of a new segment of technology called CDPs, consumer data platforms. And right now, you've got you got first-party data, which is in our CRMs, right? So everything in our CRMs is called first-party data. That's customers that we know their name or we know their email address, we know who they are. And then we got third-party data that's in our Google Analytics, right? We don't know who these people are, but we're just seeing this stuff going on, and maybe it's in your HubSpot platform as well. What CDPs do is pull together first and third-party data where we can apply machine learning to do that and do incredible things. Now, I don't know how many have ever experienced this, but if you're on Instagram, for example, one of the challenges is for companies to know, okay, this product I saw on Instagram, what a lot of people do is they're not actually clicking on the ad. They actually see that really cool product, then they go to Amazon, they search it on Amazon and buy it on Amazon. Now, how does the company know actually who to push that ad to? Because we've got broken attribution. There's no way to actually know who bought that, right? But with CDPs, we now will have the ability to do that. And with machine learning, we'll actually know exactly who to serve that ad up to and exactly when. So targeting is also really powerful. As I said, we can know who to send that ad to. But it's also going to integrate other platforms. So in a CDP, you'll plug in your email system, you'll plug in your CRM, you'll plug in your HubSpot, you'll plug in your Google Analytics, your Google Studio, you'll plug in your direct mail system. Because today, actually, direct mail is beginning to see a spike in performance. Because people just aren't used to getting mail anymore. Millennials don't get mail, personalized, self-addressed. I'm not talking about spam junk mail. I'm talking about personalized, targeted, exactly at the right time. Imagine going to a website and then 3 days later getting something, or 2 days later getting a postcard in the mail personally directed to you, personalized, related to that exact thing you were looking for, right? So CDPs and AI are going to allow us to do these kinds of things and integrate in all these, as they call it, omni-channel, all these different touch points. We're moving into a world of democratization of machine learning. So right now, people think machine learning is for big companies with data scientists and billions of dollars of infrastructure, companies like Amazon or companies like Google. But you remember the days when we used to have email servers on site at the company, right? You'd have a closet, or you'd have a server rack, and you have the email in the closet. Well, nobody does that anymore. Certainly we don't. WSI, we use Google in the cloud, right? Google Apps. And companies are now moving all that stuff to the cloud. A little company with 3 employees can have a more powerful email system today than corporations had 5 years ago. And so the same is happening with machine learning, right? Companies like IBM, Amazon, even Microsoft, the Azure cloud, they're making their AI available as a service. So you don't need data scientists on staff. You can actually just plug in and use what you want. And it's interesting that small companies, agile companies, innovative companies will be amongst the first to harness this, probably faster than big companies. And so we're going to see a lot of innovation happening. In fact, in June, Amazon actually came out with something they call Personalize, where they took their AI model and actually are giving it away to their customers to use. So the same model that they use to serve up ads to us based on our history in Amazon now can be used by any company just by plugging in for microcents per transaction. So it can be used by dating companies to match 2 people together based on those data profiles, the same data model that Amazon uses to match us with a book or us with a product can be used to match 2 people together. It could be used by a tutoring company to match a tutor with a student based on machine learning. So this is going to be opened up to companies of all sizes, and that will begin to leverage that. Let's talk about NLP, natural language processing. And Vishnu talked a little bit about this the other day. We're living in a world that's changing very quickly. There's over 100 million Amazon Alexa devices out there. I guess it's 100 million and one now that one was given out this morning. So this is actually changing a lot of things. I mean, whether it's the Siri in our pocket, whether it's Amazon Alexa, Google Home, Bixby by Samsung, or Microsoft's Cortana, these digital devices are all becoming increasingly more powerful. Brands will take on a signature voice. Vishnu talked about this. Companies today, they have a logo, they have a tagline. In the future, companies will have a signature voice. We need to think about, as companies or for our clients, we need to think about how will customers interact with our brand through a virtual assistant, right? Because right now there's a gold rush going on. And most people don't realize this. For those of you that are a little longer in the tooth, you may remember the gold rush of domains, right? Back in the day, if you were Starbucks, you needed to lock up starbucks.com. In fact, if somebody else locked it up before you, you'd pay millions of dollars for that domain, right? There was a lot of that crazy stuff going on in the early days of the internet. It still happens today, but most of those domains are already gone. But there is a new gold rush going on as it relates to virtual assistants. You can lock up skills with Amazon. Now, there's over 90,000 skills right now on Amazon, but you can, if you think about how a company will use Amazon Alexa, you can lock up the voice invocations through Alexa for your company or for your client. So Vishnu used an example of Tutor Doctor, an in-home tutoring company, where there's an Alexa skill built. So right now, if you say, Alexa, ask Tutor Doctor for an update, the Alexa will actually speak the latest update from the tutor. So right now, the way it works is that a tutor comes into the home, does a tutoring session, and then 2 or 3 days later, the family gets an email in their inbox that shows the session report. Well, that's kind of old school now. What if we could actually allow that information to come around the family kitchen table, the family dinner table, and just say, Alexa, ask Tutor Doctor for an update. It could be a home care company that says, Alexa, help. And instantly that skill sends off a phone call to the family to help, right? So this is not just stuff that Amazon's selling. We can all plug into this. And you can lock up those voice invocations for a particular brand now. And you can, there is a reason why we have VoiceCube in our e-marketplace. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh, Vishnu, he's only got a year or two experience in this. Nobody in the world has more than a couple years experience in this. This is emerging. It's emerging very quickly, and these guys have done applications on all of these platforms. Obviously, what are the search engine implications to this? Right now, of course, we got SEO, and we all want to do SEO. In the future, we're going to be doing VSO. And when I say future, I'm talking now. Right? This is actually happening now, right? Because with SEO, we want to get the client on the first page of Google, right? Well, with SVO and voice, when you're dealing with Google Home or Amazon Alexa, you need to be number one. So what are the things that drive that positioning on voice search devices? Writing content in small snippets, right? The long tail becomes more relevant than ever. Using things like HTTPS, making sure your site is set up for that. Load speed. Some of the things that drive SEO also drive VSO, but this is going to be something we'll be talking more about in the future because it'll be much more relevant to clients. Yesterday, literally yesterday, Google released BERT, which is probably many analysts are saying the most important update in the last 5 years, the most important algorithm update in Google. And BERT stands for Bidirectional Encoder Representations for Transformers, which is probably more meaningful to data scientists than it is to us. We think of a different BERT, but the point is that this was launched yesterday. Now, what it's designed to do is allow Google, whether we're speaking to Google or whether we're typing the content in, but it can actually decipher our intent, not just what we ask for, but what we mean to ask for. Now, how the heck can Google do this? How can it figure out what we actually mean to ask for? Google is always listening. Amazon is always listening. Apple is always listening. My wife says, I don't want that Alexa thing in the kitchen because it's always listening. And I say, "Hey Siri." Now, I don't know how many devices I might have triggered, but all I have to do is say, "Hey Siri," and her device pops, and I say, "It's listening as well." They're all listening all the time. And all that content is flowing up into the cloud, and by applying these deep neural networks and AI to this content, all of a sudden they can start to begin to understand human language. And that's where we're at right now. It's happening as we speak. You're going to start hearing the buzzword conversational commerce more in the future. So if we go back a few generations, our commerce was very one-to-one, right? You walk into the local merchant, you're talking to the butcher, and it's a one-on-one conversation. And then we move to where we are today, where it's very one-to-many. So brands speak to many of their clients all in the same kind of way. But as we move into the future, this kind of conversation will be not only human natural language, whether it's through a voice device or a chat bot or written, but it'll be very much one-to-one and very personalized. So you're going to hear more about conversational commerce in the future as well. So let's talk about crypto. Let's talk about blockchain. And we talked about that last year in Montreal a little bit, and I explained to you how blockchain works. I explained the concept of a distributed ledger. I talked about how radically this will transform the economy, probably like no technology we've seen in terms of a technology transformation. On June 18th, I was speaking at the Digital Growth Unlimited conference in Las Vegas, and that morning as I was speaking, Facebook launched Libra. Now, there was a bit of a leak beforehand, so I actually knew about it, and we were able to talk about it and the power of the implications of this. But when we met last year, we were talking about blockchain, and some people thinking this is like way out in the future, cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and 1,500 different cryptocurrencies. But this is real. This is happening now. And so this is going to result in mass adoption of cryptocurrency. You see, Grandma already knows how to send a recipe through Facebook. Well, Grandma's going to be sending birthday money through Facebook before you know it, right? It's going to be a very easy thing to do. And when Grandma is using cryptocurrency, you know that the world has changed, right? Because everything that cryptocurrency can do will begin to come real. Now, you might think, well, gee, that must have driven down the value of Bitcoin or Ethereum. No. In fact, some of those currencies actually spiked following this, because what people know is that if Grandma's using crypto, the world's going to change, right? And now there's all kinds of implications to this, but some people would say, why is Facebook into cryptocurrencies? Well, there's lots of reasons. It's a diversification strategy for one. Their current growth model is slowing, as we talked about earlier, and as Mary Meeker talked about. But imagine what more data can do for ad performance, ad targeting, right? Now they not only know what you're doing on their platform, they know what you're buying, they know where you're buying it from, they know what you've got in your account, they know what's going on as well offline. So for Facebook and for us as marketers, the potential targeting is extremely powerful here. It makes commerce easier. I mean, we can not just click on an ad and enter a lead on Facebook, we can buy something. And microtransactions, which we'll talk about in a second, we can actually spend 2 cents to look at this piece of content. We can spend 5 cents to watch this video right now on Facebook, because microtransactions become possible. This turns the economic model of the web on its head, which I'll talk about in a second. It's an asset-backed currency, not to get too technical, but it's not like Bitcoin. Some of the criticisms of Bitcoin is that it's not scalable, that it's slow, that it consumes vast amounts of electricity because of this mining process that makes Bitcoin work. This is a asset-backed currency, so it gets rid of a lot of those complications. Some analysts are saying that Facebook's Libra may become the reserve currency of the world. Now, that's a pretty radical concept. I don't know if I believe it, but this is what some of the buzz is. China is not happy about the U.S. being the reserve currency of the world. They have been for years talking about we need to create a new reserve currency, a basket of currencies, and balance it out, right? And whether that ends up happening, or could it be Libra? I mean, the reality is that there's nothing the government can do about this. Short of shutting down the web, there's nothing that the government can do to stop this. And it's certainly good for users in many ways. I mean, it's real bad for middlemen. You know, when, for example, obviously Visa and MasterCard, they're taking their merchant card percentage. Facebook and its partners have already said there's going to be none of that going on. In fact, if you look at the remittances, hundreds of billions of dollars a year being sent by people back home to their countries in India or in other places around the world. The average, you know, Western Union and these companies on average are taking 7% of remittances, right? Gone overnight, right? So it's a much more democratized approach to commerce. So Amazon has its own answer to that, what it calls Hyperledger, and other companies are jumping in as well. It's not going to be just a one winner take all. But we talked last year about how this will disrupt platforms. You wouldn't want to be Airbnb or Uber, or any of those kind of middlemen networks. A lot of that is going to be highly disrupted, not specifically by Libra, but by blockchain in general. And microtransactions become possible. Right? The ability, so right now the whole economic model of the web is based on us giving away two things. We give away our time and we give away our privacy to advertisers. Well, in the future, privacy can be controlled. Right? GDPR in Europe has started this ball in motion. Now California has come out with the California Consumer Protection Act, which is now clamping down on privacy. It's actually, most people think that the horses are out of the barn as it relates to privacy. But the truth is, we are actually going to be able to get our privacy back. It will, and it can actually be locked down and controlled through blockchain. So we'll actually be able to give our privacy in exchange for getting something back if we choose to give our privacy. And right now, so we give up our privacy, we give up our time in exchange for seeing these advertisements. Content producers generally get nothing on the internet. In the future, they'll be able to get money through microtransactions, and we're going to be able to control giving away of our privacy and our time. So there is an actual model where we could be sitting there getting paid to watch ads. And if we're giving up our privacy freely, this gives incredible power to advertisers to target because we have way more information on our consumers. Now, we might pay them each 3 cents to watch your ad, but who cares? We're paying Google $5 for a click. Do you think we might be willing to pay for people to see our ads if they're properly targeted? Absolutely. So there's going to be a bunch of changes here in the years to come. Let's just talk about that ecosystem I talked about earlier, an explosion, a whole new advertising ecosystem. You know, what these autonomous vehicles, that's old news. We're not going to talk about how that's going to change the way cities are built and change the way the world works in many different ways, because everybody knows that. Everybody knows autonomous vehicles are coming at us real quick, but what people don't think about is that these are really moving advertising machines. Why is Google in the autonomous vehicle business? Right, with Waymo. I mean, it's Alphabet's subsidiary, Waymo. Well, imagine you're in Mountain View and you're sitting around a table and with strategists trying to figure out, like, we already own 90% of the market. How are we going to continue to grow our revenue stream? And somebody kind of jokingly says, well, we have to create more hours than a day so people can spend more time online. But then they use that brainstorming principle of looking at the underlying principle. Okay, it's a joke, but what's the underlying principle? The underlying principle is, what if there was a way of better utilization of time? Where do people spend their time today? Well, in many places, certainly California, people spend 2 hours a day in their car. What if that car could drive itself? What would they do? Would they go online? Would they use their laptop? Would they do some work? Would they do some searches? Would they stream some media? And that's where it all begins. And of course, there's huge implications from this. UBS expects in-car ad revenue to exceed $470 billion, and that's in the US alone. We're talking about in excess of $1 trillion, the in-car advertising. So right now, the way we think about it, we sit down with our local, client and with WSI, and we say, we're going to generate some leads, right? And so those ads are pushing out on mobile devices. They're pushing out on desktop. They're pushing out on tablet. They're going to be pushing out in-car in the not-too-distant future. And that's going to create not only a vast number of new impressions, but it's also going to create a very powerful targeting ecosystem. We can look at the trip intent. Where are people going? Why are they going there? We can look at the destination. Where have they been? For how long? we can actually reroute the car in response to an advertisement to the advertiser, right? If the user chooses. So a lot of power in that ecosystem coming at us. Now, who will win? I mean, they're all battling for it. Is it going to be Tesla? Is it going to be Google with Waymo? Is it going to be Uber or Apple? Right? Everybody has a different competitive advantage in this game. And of course, the big car manufacturers are running hard at this as well. New economic models will evolve. Imagine we could literally be getting free transportation in exchange for watching ads, right, in that car. Because as we get rid of the driver, and all of a sudden we move to electric vehicles, which are hugely cost efficient, there's no more gas, it drives down the cost of advertising to a point where literally it could be free for people in exchange for watching ads. And similar to the way the cell phone companies say, well, you sign up this contract, we give you a free phone. So lots of interesting stuff on the road ahead. Let's talk about 5G and the Internet of Things. Again, another explosive, totally new ad ecosystem. So when Mary Meeker says, it's tapering off the growth in brand impressions, these two areas are going to explode brand impressions for us as digital marketers. Mobile won't be a subset of the internet anymore. We're not going to be optimizing for mobile. Mobile will be the internet. Mobile at home, we're not going to be going through a router in our house. Right? We're not going to be going through a mobile device. The internet will be everywhere. That's what 5G is. Minimal latency. It's from a technological perspective, it makes all kinds of things possible that aren't possible today. But just to give you a taste of it, I mean, today we already have things like, you can connect your refrigerator to the internet, right? You can connect devices like Tile. I don't know, does anybody have Tile? Okay, a few of you have Tile. Well, the problem with Tile is you still have to go through your local mobile device. Tile isn't connected to the internet, it's connected to your device, which is connected to the internet. But with the Internet of Things, everything has an IP address. Right? So the bicycle we drive has an IP address. Now we can push ads out through voice onto that bike, we can do whatever, but the bike has an IP address. Your dog's collar has an IP address. Your wallet has an IP address. Everything is connected to the internet. We're not going through things anymore to get there. Now, for those of you that have seen Minority Report, and this is going way back in time, but it's actually more relevant than ever. Tom Cruise walking through that mall and all of a sudden an ad comes up that's personalized, specifically targeted to him. Now, here's what's interesting. That technology actually exists today. Marshall McLuhan said that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. And that's exactly true. That technology exists. Now, today, we already know how to retarget somebody, right? They come to our website and all of a sudden they start seeing our banners. They start seeing your client's banners through retargeting. Pretty straightforward. How do we do that? We do it with a cookie, right? We put a cookie on their device. Guess what the cookie of the future is going to be? Our face. Our face is the cookie of the future. Because our faces will all be indexed, in fact they already are, by these big companies, and all it takes is an ability to capture the image of our face and now push out. Personalization of advertising already exists. Facial recognition technology already exists. This technology already exists to do exactly what happened in Minority Report. Billions of faces are already mapped. My father-in-law says, he doesn't want to be on Facebook because he doesn't want his facial recognition and all that. He doesn't realize that if anyone ever uploads his picture to Facebook, in any picture that he's in or Instagram, he's already mapped. Okay? And that auto-suggest, and you've probably all seen this, you're uploading a picture to Facebook and it says, do you want to tag this person? Because Facebook knows that person's in the picture, right? It's got all of our faces already tagged. Anybody use Google Photos? Okay, super powerful tool. I love it because it gets rid of all my duplicates. But it has this pop-up that comes up once in a while. And it says, is this the same person? So this popped up for me, and I see on the right hand my son Jordan, and on the left hand I see this blurry picture. And I don't know, quite frankly, if that's Jordan or if that's his older brother, Austin. The picture's pretty blurry, and I'm not really sure because maybe they look pretty similar when this is 20 years later, maybe they look pretty similar when they were 1. And so I zoned into the picture, and it gives you the option to look at the whole picture. And so I look at the whole picture, and I go, oh yeah, now I can see that is Jordan, and his bigger brother, Austin, is standing behind him. So now I know Google was right. And then it occurred to me, how scary is that Google recognizes my son more effectively than I do? Okay? It's no mistake why in Hong Kong right now, the government does not want the protesters wearing face masks, right? Technology can, from satellite now, with the level of resolution, can zone in and literally recognize faces on the street. So this is the world we're moving into, super powerful. Our faces will be the retargeting cookie of the future, and we will be moving into ads everywhere. And whether that's through ads on the wall, ads on windows, holograms, smart contact lenses, smart glasses, but everywhere we go, there will be ads that are personally targeted to us. Which sounds spooky, but as digital marketers, we get to control those ads. That's our business. That's the world we're moving into. So we've talked about technology. A couple of years ago, I shared with you that quote from Jeff Bezos, which I love, because he's asked, what's going to change in the future? You're the guy who knows all this stuff. And he said, I don't exactly know, but the more important question is what won't change. Because he said, I can't build a business around what's going to change, but I can build a business around what won't change. And he said, price, speed of delivery, and selection are the 3 things that aren't going to change, that customers are going to want. And when we think about WSI, what hasn't changed in the last 25 years is the ABCs, right? It's about harnessing advanced technology, using the best tools and technologies we have. There wasn't that many in the early days. Today we got the Martech 7000, right? There's lots of tools out there. We're going to continue to harness the most advanced technology. Being found, bringing traffic to that client's digital property, whether that's a website or their social properties, but helping people see what they have to offer, bringing that traffic, and then finally the conversion of that traffic, which is really all about the science of human persuasion. That's why this whole area of conversion optimization is so important, conversion architecture. It's why we're so proud to have Marty and his team as part of our network, because I'm telling you, companies don't have access to this stuff. This is not commonly available. And when he does these audits, and his team does these audits, for companies, they're blown away. Their digital marketing departments are blown away by the impact that this can make. And this is one of the things that will not change. It's the creativity that we put into understanding the end customer. Back in 1984, Dr. Robert Cialdini wrote a book that is still the standard in sales and psychology today. It's called Influence, The Power of Persuasion. And it's the essence of the science of human psychology. And much of conversion architecture is built around this. In this book, he talks about, but this is before the internet, okay? But in this book, his 3rd principle, interestingly enough, is called social proof. In 1984, he coined the concept of social proof before the internet. And social proof is that concept that we as human beings tend to do what other people do, right? We tend to follow what others do as validating that it's the right thing to do. This is why reviews are so critical, why you need to learn what Bird Eye is doing, and why it was so important for us to bring the right partner into our network. Because today, what most people don't realize is they think people, go to Google and they search on an ad and they see that ad and they click on it and, off to the website. No. They Google something, they see the ad, then they go check the reviews. Then they go to the website, then they go buy, right? So it's critical that we are thinking in terms of this concept of social proof and how we're leveraging reviews. But conversion is all about harnessing the human psychology, and this is going to be very difficult for AI to replicate. So I've talked about a lot of technologies today, but really the question is, which of these technologies are going to replace us? Where we talked about the importance of continuing to learn and develop our skills and continue to grow, but where do we focus and where don't we? Right? And it's this area of psychology is something that is not going to go away. It's going to be very difficult for science or for AI or machines to replace. Back in 1950, there was a fellow named Alan Turing, and he was a scientist, and he asked this question, like, when will we know when machines have reached a human level of intelligence? And he came up to the conclusion, he said, when humans can write, or when machines can write in a way that's indecipherable from humans, we'll know that machines have reached human intelligence. Which sounded like a pretty good idea at the time. And every year, data scientists compete in the Turing test, trying to see who will be the first, whose AI algorithm will be the first to beat the Turing test. Now, it's a bit of a qualitative, subjective assessment as to whether or not, it actually is or isn't, right? Some people believe the Turing test was beaten last year. Other people think this year, next year. But any way you slice it, today we're at a point in time where machines can write in a way that's indecipherable from human beings. But being able to write and being a storyteller are two very different things. Being able to write and understanding human psychology are two very different things. And to give you an example of this, if I take you back to the stage that was set in 1932 in France, in the play Les Mis, Jean Valjean was just released after 19 years in prison. He was in prison for stealing a loaf of bread to feed his sister's starving family. And so he was released from prison, and he's invited to stay the night at the home of the bishop. And in the middle of the night, he got up and began stealing the bishop's silverware. The bishop, hearing noises in the night, got up and confronted Valjean, and he was struck to the ground as Jean Valjean disappeared into the darkness of the night. The next morning, there was a knock at the door, and there was the inspector and Jean Valjean in handcuffs. The inspector said, "We found this man. We found your stolen silverware. He stole this. He said you gave it to him." Well, the bishop looked at the inspector. He looked at Jean Valjean. And he said, "This man tells the truth." He said, "My friend, there must have been something on your mind last night. You left in such haste that you forgot the most valuable gift I gave you." And he reached down and handed him 2 silver candlesticks. Well, surprised by the news, the inspector went off, unlocked Jean Valjean, and went off. And the bishop looked at Valjean and he said, "Remember this, my son. Remember and see a deeper meaning in this moment. For God has redeemed you from the darkness, and I have purchased your soul for God. Take this silver and make of yourself an honest man." Now, to understand that and to write something like that, you need to be able to do more than just pass the Turing test. You need to understand the essence of human redemption. And that is something that machines are not going to be able to replace in the near future, and maybe even the distant future. So I think in closing, when we think about where we focus, the skills we develop, we need to understand that as strategists, this is something that machines will not replace in the short term. It's an area, digital strategy is an area where we need to continue to focus. Those who understand human psychology, investing our time to understand things like conversion architecture. Because the future belongs to the creatives, to the strategists. The future belongs to the artists. And the future belongs to the storytellers. So I hope the presentation today has given you some food for thought, some things to think about. I hope over the last couple of days you've gained some ideas, some strategies, things that you're going to implement into your business to grow it and take it to the next level. And I look forward to seeing everybody tonight at the party. Thanks for listening.